All right, how to build ChatGPT part 5. This one is the finale, Wiz, because as we've traversed this journey from simple responses API through RAG and MCP connectors, through the OpenAI agents SDK, and building something end to end, the adding features piece kind of feels like it's one piece, and we can cover it all today. Although there are a lot of features we could add, it just kind of depends, right? Like, which feature are we adding? How difficult is it to add? How much front end? How much back end? We kind of get into this. We're deep into the weeds of exactly what you'll deal with kind of in real life as you're building out these apps, right? I mean, it's like, why do we need that feature? And what exactly should it look like on the front end? And as mostly back end devs here, I think it's pretty straightforward what needs to be done besides the Vibity vibes on the front end. So today we're covering research and we're covering thinking models. But what you're going to cover today kind of translates to any feature one might add, right?
Yeah, I think this is something that's a tough task, no matter what part of the stack you're working at, no matter where you're kind of coming from. Your ChatGPT is like a multi-featured application, right? There have been dozens of engineers working on this for multiple years to get it to the point that it is, and so it's
Yeah.
it takes a little bit of finagling.
Yeah. So I mean, no matter which feature you're trying to add, you're going to run into some issues, and especially if you're not natively like really good at front end or really good at back end, to sort of do this all yourself. Like, for our audience here, that aspiring AI engineers, people trying to build, ship, and share, especially prototype level applications, to be able to get this far and to be able to add features to an end-to-end app, that's the kind of skill set you want to say, okay, I got this, I can do this. To go and be like a scale front end engineer or a scale back end engineer, you're going to have to really develop a specific expertise. But anybody can kind of do the level of end to end we're going to show today, right?
Yeah, anybody.
And like
Literally.
they should be able to in 2026 as AI engineers. What do you think about that? I think yes.
Strongly yes.
Yeah, and like the vibes are needed, but they're not sufficient. But
Correct.
sometimes they're okay.
You love the vibe.
Ah.
You love the vibes.
So how do we vibe without avoiding AI slop when adding features to the prototypes? This is the kind of discussion of the day, and hopefully we'll add some insight into everybody's like development process. There's a lot of words being thrown around there, vibes, slop. How do we do stuff that's production grade, clean code in 2026? How do we sort of do this ourselves, but with AI assistance and not fully vibes? Hopefully today's walkthrough of everywhere we've been and the way that we've gone about sequencing and putting stuff together, both on the back end and on the front end, hopefully helps people understand exactly how to do this themselves. And, spoiler alert, like there's not like a perfect right answer to this today. And it's evolving in real time, how companies are, embracing the vibes, embracing the AI assist, embracing the true depth of understanding of their new hires, and how some companies are not so much, and really keeping it super old school. So we're going to try to find the balance today. And so it's time to close out how to build ChatGPT. Let's go ahead and kick it off. Wiz, you ready?
Oh, I couldn't be more ready. Jimpity, let's go.
All right. So we're going to bring the Vibity vibes today, guys, and we're going to try to close this out strong. This has been a bit of an adventure if you've been following the series so far. And if you haven't been following the series so far, it's a great day to jump in, because I'm going to go ahead and make sure that you're fully up to speed on how to build ChatGPT from soup to nuts. And this is a nice capstone. So if you do have questions along the way, we are going to have time for discussion today, and we are going to be able to sort of answer any specific questions you might have about specific features you might want to add to your application. So don't hesitate to smash the chat or the comments on your viewing platform. All right, so today we want specifically to go on this little journey together. I want to recap parts 1 through 4 of the series, concepts to code, and wrap this thing up. We want to understand what the process is for adding features now that we've sort of built a number of things out. We've added them all at once very quickly last time. Let's sort of break down how that went and what the role of vibe coding was in that, specifically from Wiz's perspective as somebody that, historically has written most of the code himself, but is, like all engineers today, embracing more and more AI assist in even his daily work. So when I had 2 features, thinking models and the deep research API, well, turns out we already had a little bit of thinky and a little bit of research last time. But let's show you specifically with the API and wanting to add the feature of being able to add reasoning, how this actually works under the hood and on the front end in our application that we've built. And then we want to kind of understand, like, when we're leveraging the responses API, when we're leveraging the OpenAI agents SDK, when we're leveraging this ecosystem of OpenAI tooling that has allowed us to kind of get 90% of the way there to any given ChatGPT style application. Is this really production ready? Is this something that we want to take and integrate into our organization? If not, where's it falling short? If not, what is the use of doing something like this on your own and building, shipping, and sharing your own ChatGPT? There's a lot of whispers that, maybe ChatGPT just doing something that ChatGPT does isn't quite worthwhile. What do we think about that? Well, we have some opinions. So we'll get into that at the end of the demo. We'll call this kind of the value of ChatGPT apps, the discussion afterwards. So let's kind of walk through where we've been. Let's talk about how to add features. Let's see exactly how to do that. And then let's discuss as a community, what's the value of doing this today in 2025, heading into 2026? Where does this add value for you? Where does this add value for your company? So first off, we set out with a very specific goal in mind. We kind of looked at ChatGPT and we thought, can we build this kind of simple looking front end? But there's a lot of stuff happening under the hood. And can we look at specifically, maybe zoom in a little bit here, can we look at like what's going on when we want to just add a file? Well, this is kind of that retrieval augmented generation piece. We're doing retrieval. We're augmenting the prompt on the back end. We're sending it to the LLM. What about actually leveraging some of these connectors, some of these MCP servers to kind of get access to all of our data, whether it's Google Drive or Google Calendar or any other specific kind of platform full of data that we might want to give our application access to? Turns out that's also just kind of retrieval and augmenting our generation with that data. Although the way we connect uses MCP instead of directly doing classic dense vector retrieval RAG. When we talk about agents, that's where, the agentic search piece and the access to tools is kind of coming out of the box, as I'm sure you know if you've leveraged ChatGPT in your daily work. And there's a lot of other agents we can look at, like, for instance, today, the deep research API and the deep research out of the box toolkit from OpenAI is one that we can just pick up and very, very easily integrate here. And, when we kind of go further, we can start thinking about, if we're looking at the top here, maybe zoom in a little bit here, we can pick models. We can think, decide how long to think automatically for me, please, ChatGPT. We kind of looked into this today. Is this something that we get out of the box if we just say, hey, use GPT-5? Well, Wiz is here to tell you exactly what we found. Or is it something that requires a little bit more of nuance, a little bit more development on our side to do it, to decide how much thinking, low, medium, high effort, and exactly how to implement that? Is it something that we need to do ourselves, or is it something that OpenAI makes it easy to get this kind of reasoning capability. So when we kicked off this series, we started with the responses API and we started with prompting. We're going to do the TLDR on all of this, so definitely check out the responses API event for everything here. But we kind of started off with this idea that the first API that kind of set the tone for the whole industry was the chat completions API. It's been updated this year. We're not talking system user assistant, we're talking developer user assistant. And from the chat completions API, we saw the assistance API was a place that we could start building agents, but that kind of grew into the responses API released this year in March. And when we looked just under the hood, it's very simple. It's input, output. And so the basic response generation here is just literally asking for the response, telling it the model, what kind of input. This is the simplest possible way to be on the client side and get a response from the API. Okay, very easy. Now, the responses API was a little bit more flexible than just that, because that is essentially the chat completions API, though. And, this was kind of the evolution we saw this year. Even since we started this series, we saw a new drop on kind of responses, API level, agent level tooling. And it was, just I think about a month ago, we covered it on this channel, where they dropped the agent kit and the agent builder. And so, it's worth noting here, this is a great line from it. Since releasing the Responses API and Agents SDK in March, we've seen developers and enterprise build end-to-end agentic workflows for deep research, for customer support, and more. This kind of gets to the heart of why we wanted to do this series in the first place. Is this something that you should be doing in your work environment? Is this something that you should be doing? I think the answer is yes, whether you're using this orchestration framework or any other. So we kind of saw the responses API get released in March. That was the new tools for building agents. And then we saw even more tools for building, deploying, and optimizing agents just within the last month. Specifically, Agent Builder was the thing that was really called out. We're excited to look at the latest and greatest Agent Builder coming out from LangGraph soon on this channel. So part 2 of this series was this kind of RAG and MCP. We wanted to kind of connect our application to external data. And of course, when the user is using our application, they just want to get great output. They just want to have it be fact checkable. They just want to understand exactly where this information is coming from, avoid hallucinations. We want to kind of dial this in, setting up the retriever so that we can do the generation, retriever generator status. We've talked about RAG a million times on this channel, and the responses API really allows us to sort of not really worry about setting up vector stores ourselves. Everything is kind of handled under the hood. And moreover, if we leverage the MCP connectors directly, we can kind of have them do the retrieval for us and pass it directly to the generator. So we're sort of connecting users, whether it's dense vector retrieval or through MCP, to the information that we know they need in their application. As we like to say, you do retrieval well, generation goes well. And this was also pretty simple to implement. So this is an example of a basic file search with the responses API, where here's the model again, here's the input again. What's the only thing we add? We add some tools. Now, it's kind of interesting that we add tools in the responses API. This feels very agentic, but notice the tool is a file search tool, and we've set up the vector store previously. This is in the RAG and MCP notebook in the repo for you guys. And so it's kind of just another simple step. We can take it again to the MCP level very simply. We have the response, we have the model. Now the tool, we want to go ahead and specify the MCP server that we want to hit. We might have to set up OAuth, but realistically, it's just another line to sort of add these MCP connectors into our applications. And so this was very straightforward to sort of think about doing. Dope. Finally, we went into part 3 where we said, okay, now let's talk about agents. Now we're feeling pretty agentic with the tools already in the RAG and MCP part. As we know, like an agent is just an LLM that's got some tools. Okay, it's an LLM that's got some tools. And we've talked about the agent loop 1,000 times. We've got to manage the context. We've got to manage the conversation. We've got to select the right tools for the toolbox. Well, the Agents SDK allows us to be a little bit more flexible in the things that we build than just the responses API. Like we can have multi-agent systems very easily with this, and we can leverage this idea of agents as well as handoffs, handing off conversations to another agent, like getting a phone call transferred. And so we can look inside of the Agents SDK notebook, and there's a number of agents that we had built there, but you'll kind of see something very similar here. It's a very similar pattern. The agent is just now, we give it a name, we give it some high-level instructions, but we also give it the tool. Instructions plus tools equals agents all the time. And we, again, specify the model. And you'll notice here, model settings, you must use the tool. Because we're doing research. We want you to actually look. We don't want you to just assume and hallucinate your way into some research I want you to do with some web searching. And so the research agent is one example. There were about 4 agents there, but the other one we're going to look at here is the calendar agent. And you'll notice here's an agent that actually leverages an MCP tool directly. So, it's just kind of starting to stack up in complexity, starting to be added all together up into the Agents SDK. And we can kind of put a multi-agent system together. We built this calendar researcher, this orchestrator, where we had a calendar agent, an event analyzer agent, a research agent, and then basically a preparation agent. Like make sure you're setting this up for success first and foremost. Okay, so we did all of that. We got to part 4. We were like, okay, let's set this up end to end, go vibe coding, and go back-end deployment. And this is where, we want to kind of be able to embrace the vibes, but also leverage all of the high-quality code that we've built before. And as we've talked about, there's a lot that can be said about vibe coding. Basically, like, vibe coding is cool, especially if you're doing something that you're not good at naturally. Like, so a lot of us are back-end devs. Maybe the front end is something we want to just leave to vibe coding. That's probably fine, especially in this early prototyping phase. Do it kind of without laboring. And importantly, though, to sort of move beyond vibe coding, we want to at least understand the code. We want to be able to say, that looks good to me. And even if you kind of are only able to understand it at a high level, we want to be able to do that with the front end and with the back end. This kind of AI assistance is something we want to be able to leverage, but it's not something we want to fully rely on. This, of course, is an emerging space today. So as we have kind of shown before in this series, we can kind of think about the way all this comes together visually, looking at this simple stack. And so we did use Vercel. We'll continue to use that today. And we did use the OpenAI, whether it's the Responses API or the Agents SDK, to kind of orchestrate. Now, when we look in at the front end, back end setup, we're actually leveraging a fast API backend, and we're leveraging a Vercel vibe coded front end. Okay, so Vercel is created by the makers of Next.js, which is kind of a higher level framework built on top of React. Very, very good at developing front ends. Very easy to deploy front ends with Vercel. Very, very nice solution if you're going to vibe code up some front ends. Now, we also noticed that, as we've mentioned before, that the OpenAI Responses API allows us to quickly handle single files, allows us to quickly handle vector database spinning up and searching, allows us to quickly handle even MCP connectors and agent connectors that we're sort of hitting via APIs. And we're also, really able to kind of leverage this whole OpenAI ecosystem to kind of build everything we need. So when we talk about now adding features at this point, we're going to add two today. We're going to add the reasoning model, and we're going to add, and notice like, we can add some of this stuff already, and we've been playing with this already. If you define a reasoning effort, for instance, when you just define a model, if you want to, it's always there. So is that the best way to add reasoning? Let's take a look. We also want to think about the deep research API, and we want to kind of replace that whole cloth researcher that Wiz had built with multiple agents with just a simple, easy API. Now, when we think about how to do this practically, right, we have to think about how the front end and the back end exist and how they kind of connect to each other, this hosted application here. Now, everything on the back end is going to be connected to all this stuff that's orchestrated, and all that's great. And that's kind of happening with Fast API. Now, Fast API is kind of the leading Python-based web framework, and the sort of setup here, the app file itself is extremely simple, and we can see how some of the stuff that we've built in notebooks before translates directly into that app.py file. So the simplest file just basically calls the app, and then we essentially tell it to do stuff. And we can kind of walk through the fact that in our part 4, we've kind of taken pieces from each of the previous parts and put them into that backend. And so we initialize the app. Okay, fine. Initialize the app. Give a nice title here. Okay, great. But the kind of meat of this thing, for instance, the responses API part is like, okay, we want to define the chat endpoint and be able to put in a request and get a response, where we want to be able to leverage that simple chat completion model. And there is code you can sort of look at underneath these. This is all available in the GitHub repo for you, of course, but this is kind of the high level of built right in to that Fast API style. Now we go to part 2. We're going to be thinking about how RAG is kind of built into that Fast API backend as well. And we're going to be able to see, okay, we can do file upload. We can get the uploaded files lists. We're kind of developing these different capabilities that we need to be able to essentially do the single file RAG here. Delete the file, clear the session endpoint, and then also set up these vector stores. These are all simple things to do just within a notebook, but what we're doing is we're sort of casting it into that Fast API backend framework to be able to then deploy this so that somebody else can use our app and not just us. And then finally, the agents that we set up here, where this kind of do research piece, this is the piece that we're going to align more with the deep research API rather than our custom deep research style multi-agent system we set up last time. And then, of course, the front end is mostly just vibe coded with Vercel, as we've seen in the past. And, you can keep in mind some sort of best practices of vibe coding as you get into that. So before we get into today's demo, Wiz, so I want to just sort of discuss here, this is kind of an important point today that we keep talking about, and we keep trying to figure out the right way to provide guidance on. But in this specific circumstance, are we using vibe coding to make changes to the front end and to the back end? Are you using vibe coding to mess with your Fast API app? And do you recommend doing that, or do you think that the back end should be kept a little bit more holy, a little bit more untouchable, and then vibe code up the front end as much as you want?
Yeah, so there's like a lot of clarification that's needed here, right? So vibe coding versus AI assisted development is an important piece that we're not really covering, and I think it's really important to think about, right? So vibe coding is just asking the thing to do something and then going hands off, right? Absolutely, that's the front end. There's no thought being put into, I'm not a front end guy. I don't know JavaScript. I don't know, how to best construct a front end app. Not my area of expertise, right?
That's right. That's right.
For the back end, I know what endpoints I need. I know what they should look like. I have some of the code from OpenAI, but I'm still not going to write every line of code. I'm not going to write every doc string, right? AI can do that, right? It can document my code. It can add comments and doc strings to its heart's content, right? So if you're not leveraging AI at all, it's like you may as well just use a text editor at this point, right?
That's right. That's right.
Which you can do, and that's dope. Nothing against that. But when you have access to all of the documentation, you have access to exactly what you want and where it should live, when you can write out the function signatures, when you can describe for each function signature the logic, and just have whatever model you most prefer write the actual kind of boilerplate. That's great, but for front end, I know none of that. So I just say make front end good. For back end, I set up everything that I need. I give all the context that I know it needs.
Yeah.
And then I say, complete fill in the blanks here.
Yeah.
And this is the issue is, if you don't have the knowledge of what is needed, what's useful, what you can provide, and you try to just say, give me backend, this is where you're going to run into issues, right? This is how you're going to find yourself experiencing existential sadness.
Yeah, but let's say, because this is a series for beginners here. So let's say I'm a beginner and I don't really know what the hell's going on with front end or back end. Like by that sort of logic of, well, I don't really see myself as either one. I'm just going to vibe it up. Like that seems perfectly reasonable to me. If that's the logic we want to stick with, is there something more important, in either space? It just sort of depends on your aims. Like if you're just vibing things all the time, you're not really going to ever become a professional in either one. So you've got to kind of know where you're trying to go here. But yeah, like how do we think about the line between AI assistance and vibe coding for true beginners?
Yeah, I mean, the way that I think about it, the way that the way that I want people to think about it, is effectively when we're getting started. This is really going to be, I think, not what people want to hear, but it is true. We're getting started with something. That's when we should be writing the most manual code.
Oof.
Right? When you're starting to learn Python, you're starting to learn Fast API, you're starting to learn these patterns. That's when you should be writing code, right? You only want to abstract away from the code once you start understanding what the code do. Like if you for instance say to AI, write a for loop, but you have no idea what that means. It's like you're up a creek, right? You can't describe what it does to anybody. You can't understand how it works. You can't understand how to modify it. You're cutting yourself off at the knees, right? So you're getting started. Eventually, you've written enough, at app dot whatevers that you don't need to literally type out those words anymore, but that they're going to appear.
Yeah.
Like this is the way I would think about it. If anything that's produced by the LLM is surprising to you, you have not learned enough, right? You have not spent enough time actually getting proficient at the skill because you're seeing something that's unique or surprising, right? You want to be in a spot where every line of code that the LLM produce is in some way expected. Be like, oh, okay, I see the approach is taken here. Oh, I see why it made that decision. Oh, I
Yeah.
see why X, Y, and Z. Right. This is the idea of this is in my opinion, right, the way we should feel about vibe code. For me, the front end, it's nothing but surprise the whole time. I've got no idea. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Oh, that's neat. Oh, I didn't know I was gonna do that. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
hey, now I got a box here. I love that. I love this box. Let's go. You know, versus the back end, it writes code, and I'm like, whoa, what is it?
Yeah, I mean, see,
Get
I'm a
that
little
out
bit
of
more
here.
interested in the front end these days, right? And so like I'm kind of trying to pay attention a little bit more to, when I ask for a fresh landing page from V0 or something, what it actually did to sort of code it up. And so I'm struck by the training wheels analogy. Like what's the right amount of training wheels these days? I guess is the sort of question before we take those bad boys off. And then taking them off, it's like the reverse of going fully AI assist. It's like there is no taking them off. Or I guess this is what we were chatting about, or this week, is many production environments that you're going to get a full-time job in, they do not let their people use Cursor.
Oh no, yeah.
I mean, they let you use, like finish the chunk level AI assist, but not like just vibe it out, and so I think that's where the training wheels come off, is when you get into a situation where you've got the full-time job and now you're over your head and you actually never learned enough to be able to succeed here. So you just you're up a creek a little bit. And so I think that's the thing to keep in mind, whether that full-time job is in the front end or the back end. You just kind of don't want to find yourself there. It's something like that. I mean, it's tough. It's how do we deal with all these tools? I don't know.
It's one of those things where there are jobs where you don't need to know, right? I mean, there are jobs where vibe coding's enough. There are jobs where everything, it can be automated, and there are jobs where you could be automated, and all these things can be true, right? But if you want to stay unautomatable, if you want to make sure that you're not replaceable by a prompt machine, then
You're
you have
not hit with those sweet layoffs that are smashing everybody all the time. They're gonna be like, whoa,
Yeah.
whoa, don't lay off that person.
That's right. You have to know.
Yeah.
You have to know something, right? Like if all of the knowledge is contained in the LLM and you're just a conduit for its knowledge,
Yeah.
everybody can be a conduit for its
I think
knowledge.
this is the best argument for not relying too heavily on vibes.
Yeah.
Because you will literally just get fired when the AI, when the next coding agent, like you will be the person who gets replaced by the coding agent that OpenAI sells next.
Exactly so.
Yeah. Okay, beautiful. Okay, so when we think about adding features then, Wiz, how actually difficult was it to add the deep research API and the thinking model to this? Super easy?
Trivial.
Super easy
Yeah.
for the back end, super easy for the front end. Could you just vibe the whole thing out?
I don't know about the front end. I just vibed it up. So it could have been very difficult, or could have been very easy. For me, I thought 0% about it. So that's great.
You clicked it and you user tested it and you're like, it works.
I clicked the buttons and it did what I expected. It
Yeah.
did some extra things that I wasn't expecting, but are dope. So that's great. But yeah, I mean, for the back end, also very easy. It's an API. We know how to hit APIs. We know kind of what endpoints we want based on OpenAI's best practices. We know, the formats that things are expected to be in. We understand some of the workflow that's different, right, between this deep research task and the more chat, based task. So the back end was also not difficult, but it was not difficult because I had knowledge and an expectation of what should be true and what should be happening, that I didn't have for the front end, which was just kind of like I know I want it to work. I know I need a button for this.
That's right. That's right.
You know, and one of the beautiful things about having the back end ready, right, is that you can use that as guidance for what the front end needs to implement, right? So I know, for instance, for deep research, well, you know, we may want to give it access to specific tools. We may want to give it access to a specific workflow similar to, you know, OpenAI. And so the front end can then infer what is necessary based on that and then tie it together in whatever way, you know, our friend Claude sees
Yeah.
to be
It's
correct.
almost like the back end is a little bit more tied to like the product requirement functionality than if you can do the back end, you sort of must kind of understand the breadth of the scope of the product, and then the front end is more like exactly how are we to engage with this outside of our coders engaging with this. Interesting. That's an interesting sort of point there. Perhaps back end people are a little bit more tied to.
I mean, I imagine the same is true from the front end to the back end. You know, because you know what widgets you have, you know what APIs you need to hit. But I'm not confident in that because I'm not a front end guy. So
Yeah. Okay, so all right. There's other things that we could add here that we're not going to add, like image gen, like the canvas, like study mode,
yeah.
like voice mode. When we think about these types of features, like, do you think is like the bottleneck on the back end or is the bottleneck on the front end for all of these? It just sort of like they're all the same amount of easy, but some of them have more complicated front ends. How do you think about adding more features beyond what we're going to show how to add today?
I mean, they're all APIs, right? So
They're all in the OpenAI ecosystem already. They've sort of set this up for developers. So I kind of picked the OpenAI ecosystem for this. It's pretty well set up.
Well, and I mean, like for something like Canvas, it's just kind of how are you using the APIs with the front end. So you know, but it all requires backend changes,
and they're all equally roughly easy-ish.
with the exception of Canvas. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what makes Canvas different?
There's no Canvas API.
Oh, well, there you go.
There you go.
All right. So let's go ahead and get to the demo here, Wiz. Let's show us how to add some features to our ChatGPT application and outline how we might think about adding even more features if we wanted to. Over to you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, let's do it. Let's do it, guys. This is the fun part. This is what we're here for. You know, we want that Jeopardy. We want it now. And this is fun. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is look at the thing going burr, which we can do right here. Whoop. All right, look at this. Look at this. So we can ask questions like, what makes cats so cute? A common question that we really need the answer to. Short answer, they hit a lot of our built-in cute buttons at once. I don't know, a bunch of different responses. Really quite a bit more serious than I was expecting. Turns out there's been a lot of research on this. And so what better way to explore it than with deep research? Let's go. So the way that we use deep research in this application, we can start a new chat and we can say, you know, hey, you know, how is AI leveraged in cancer research? You know, then we can click the deep research button and then we have some options. We can do quick, which is their O4 mini implementation, or we can do deep, which is their O3 implementation. So this one's a little bit faster. Behind the scenes as well, we're choosing some parameters about how long we want this to go for. We can choose what tools it has access to. We can choose if we want to do this additional processing, you know, of asking a clarifying question. This is the flow that you're used to with OpenAI, where it's going to be like, hey, this is what I thought you said. Is that true? And then enrich prompt, which is basically going to use meta prompting to build a better prompt. And we can go ahead and we can just send this off like this with start deep research. I'm not going to start it because it's going to take forever. But the idea is that this is how we do it. And then we have this status in progress because we're currently researching deeply. The idea here is that we have this task, right? What makes cats so cute? And then we've given it this web search, and then we get the classic warning. This may take several minutes. And we're basically just looking at the status, which we're polling through a webhook. Now, this is important because this is different to our chats, right? So if we get rid of deep research here and we just say, how is AI leveraged in cancer research, and we send that request off, it's just going to hit the API and wait for a response, right? It's going to await the response here. It's not going to need to sit here and poll an endpoint until it's done. So this is what we're doing. We'll come back at the end after this deep research has been completed. And for right now, we're going to look at some code, and we're going to discuss how easy it was to do this, which was quite easy. So in the code, we have a bunch of stuff going on. I'm going to zoom in a lot so that you don't have to look at this this absolutely terrible response. In our terminal, you'll see that we have this kind of info, okay. We're getting the status from deep research, right? This is important because we need to make sure we have the actual, research being done, because it's a long-running job. We don't want our process just sit there hanging, waiting, right? We in fact really don't want that. That's cringe. So what we do is we basically just poll. We poll. At some point, it'll be done, and when it's done, then we're gonna move that response to the front end. So this is the way that we're thinking about that deep research task. Okay. So how do we actually get it going? Well, let's look at our file structure. We have the same file structure we had before, but this time we have an API. We have our app.py. We have our deep research config, and we have our deep research.py. Deep research, unsurprisingly, is going to be what we use to run deep research. Our basic app is still important, still existing. We love that basic app. Let's go look at all this stuff. You're going to notice that it's the same internal guts code. We're just calling it by a specific name here in case we want to run that functionality separate. So let's look at deepresearch.py. We also have deep research config. This is less important. This is basically just, you could make this a TOML file or a YAML file. We're just using Python because it's easiest. But the idea is that we have a number of things we wish to be true, and we have a number of ways we're achieving some of our goals when it comes to how we think about our prompts and how we think about, the fact that deep research is a long-running task that costs a lot of dollars. This is the idea. Okay, so this is just a config file, right? Don't need to worry too much about that. In our actual deep research, we have our, some data models. The easiest thing to see here is that we just need a way to determine what we're doing easily and quickly. We have our research status. We know what the status codes are from the OpenAI documentation, so we know we can build a good backend. A lot of this stuff is what we're going to be writing ourselves, right? Anything that's descriptive of the problem. And then we have our base model. This is our data model. This is our deep research request. There's a lot of stuff going on in the deep research request, and we want to be able to populate all of it in a way that's fitting for the front end. And also, importantly, right, this is still context engineering. Even though we're not really taking advantage of it necessarily, this is still context engineering, right? We still want to make sure we're getting exactly what we need back out from our deep research request. This is important. Without this stuff, we're kind of up a creek. So we have our query. We have what model we're going to use. We have what background process we want to use, right? This is determining, do we want this to run in the background, or we want to wait for it? We don't want to wait for it. We want it to run in the background. We have a maximum tool calls. This is just exposing a parameter in the deep research API. We have which tools we can use. Again, this is exposing a parameter in the deep research API. We have what vector stores we may wish to use. Now, we've already set up the vector store information in our app, right? We did that the last time that we talked. So we already have this functionality out of the box. We have, if we want to use web search or code interpreter, and then we have our webhook URL. This is the URL that we're going to actually use. The idea is that, again, we don't want to just sit there waiting, right? We want this to be something that we just pull until it's done. And then we have our session ID, which is important for this above section. Now, this is possible because OpenAI is actually doing a lot of the heavy lifting for us for our deep research requests, right? Their server is managing this session. We are not needing to manage the session, right? This problem would be a lot more complicated if we had to manage those sessions. But instead, we're able to just offload it onto OpenAI. This is something you need to know, right? If you don't know this, you just ask AI to do this, it's not going to reasonably, it's not going to do this correctly, right? It's going to think that it should manage sessions. It's going to think, or what, I'm not quite sure what it's going to think, but it's definitely not going to assume that OpenAI is handling all of this for us, which lets us be quite a bit more, concise in what we need. And then we have our, clarification request model, which is easy enough. We have some input, some context. Prompt, enrichment request, which is going to be our user input, and then the research type, right? For longer research, we're gonna change some things, and then we have finally our deep research response. This is the actual response we're gonna get, and allows us to parse it out in a way that looks pretty. And then we have our clarification response, self-descriptive, enriched prompt response, self-descriptive, and now we have our deep research manager. Now this manager is something that's going to be managing our various deep research requests. Okay. Now we're using for this, we're being a little bit cringe. Okay. We're being a little bit cringe. What we're doing is we're storing all of this in memory. Now, what we could do instead is use something like Redis or any other job management a backend in order to store our sessions so we had persistence throughout restarts. We're not going that hard. We don't want 200 more lines of code just for the Redis implementation, so we do it in memory. A little bit cringe. That's the way it happens. Classic init, start deep research. We generate the unique ID. We prepare our tools depending on which tools we've asked for in our request. We build our request parameters, which is going to include everything that we've set in our config. We're going to specify additional kwargs keyword arguments, and we're going to request the webhook URL, and then we're going to send this off to the endpoint. And this is going to be what we wait for. Our deep research response is what we're going to pull after this is done. This is where all of the magic is happening. This background, if we want to do the background processing, which we do, we're going to go ahead and set this up for correct polling, and then error handling written by AI. I'm not going to write error handling when AI can just do it for you. Okay, try accept blocks, cringe. AI, write some. Okay, preparing our tools. Tools is easy, right? We have some number of tools. We want to add tools if we need them, right? And this is all we do. There you go. Okay. Process response. This is the big one. We know what the response should look, literally big, right? We know what the response should look like, but we have to play nice with Pydantic. We have to play nice with OpenAI's APIs. And so there's a lot of code to just parse out the values correctly from OpenAI. Into our Pydantic models. It is what it is. You just have to write some code. It's all good. Getting the research status. Why do we need getting research status? Well, what if we're running the deep research task, right? And it's long running. Well, we need some function to determine, like how to check for it. So this is what we do. If it's completed, then we return the completed research. Otherwise, we just ask if it's done. If it's not done, we carry on. Easy peasy. Cancel research. This is canceling it from the manager. So what this means is that we will stop caring about that deep research. However, so it's no longer polluting resources. However, OpenAI is not actually going to cancel the research. You're still going to pay for that. But that's just the way the world works. Our clarification agent is easy enough. This is the thing we need to ask the user if we understand the request. And you'll notice that this is just using a normal client's response, right? No deep research needed. Basically, what it's doing is it's just sending your request to normal Jeopardy, and then normal Jeopardy is asking, do I understand correctly? And if you don't, we're going to rephrase the input. There you go. Okay. Same thing for enriching the prompt. It's just a simple agent. We've already looked at this stuff. We've already done this before in the agents SDK. Webhook handler, classic. We need to handle some webhooks. We love that. Everybody loves that. That's all we need. Let's look now at our app.py, which is going to contain the endpoints that we need. So that's all the deep research, specific configs out of the way. Now we're going to look at the actual endpoints that we've made. The endpoints are real easy. We need a deep research endpoint, right? Okay, let's go. It's going to do a check to see if deep research is available. I didn't do that. I didn't write this line of code. AI wrote this line of code, right? I didn't think to check if deep research was available on the user's account. It's a good include. We're gonna add it. When AI suggested this, I said to myself, good looking out, AI. Okay. Otherwise, it's very easy, right? We're just going to leverage the stuff that we built in deepresearch.py. This is it. This is all we got to do, right? Deep research enrichment request. We just looked at the implementation of this. It's literally just an agent that we've built with OpenAI's SDKs. Then finally, prepare the deep research request. It's just a big blob, right? Like there's nothing special going on here. And then we're going to go ahead and await the manager for the deep research request. Now, this is important because we're not going to do the bare research request in our endpoint. We're going to push it through the manager. Okay, there you go. Which is what happens. Okay. Next, we're going to get the status. Now, what this is important for is determining if we are done our research, right? You saw on the other screen that it said, completed versus in progress. This is important. We're basically just saying, hey, get this status. Then we need an endpoint that's actually going to get the cancellation completed. And again, this is not going to delete it from OpenAI. This is going to remove it from the manager, right? The reason we're doing this is because we don't want to wind up in this world where where our manager is running on these tasks that we no longer care about. We're wasting resources, right? Next, we have our clarify endpoint. This runs our clarification agent. Our enrich endpoint. This runs the enrichment agent. And our webhook for monitoring the status through webhook. And that's it. That's all we need to do, right? That's 100% of the code that we added, right? So this is the code that I wrote for this. Say, for instance, for this particular block, I wrote this, I wrote this, and I wrote this. And then I said, add the try except, okay? Add the material that I don't want to. Add this dumb boilerplate I don't care about, right? I care about it existing. I don't care to write it. For something like, the enrich, again, you define what you need, you define the signature, and then we write this, and then we get the AI to wrap everything around it, right, into the try except block. I don't want to hit tab that many times. And then again, the first time I did this, it suggested we check to see if it's available. I think that's a useful thing to do. Is it necessary at every one of these? Yes. It can't hurt. It can only help. But this is the idea. That's all I need to do. And then very quickly, we will beep, boop, beep, boop, back to our completed deep research task. Look at this. 22 sources about why cats are cute. It took us, status is completed, took us 755 seconds, which is absurd, by the way. You'll notice something about the output. This is Markdown, but my front end is not formatting this like Markdown. So what I'm going to do in Cursor is I'm going to say, make sure that the output is formatted in Markdown and then I don't know, hopefully it does it, right? I got no idea what's going on in JavaScript, but the idea is that we get this nice, well-researched version of why cats are cute. Now, is this response particularly better than just asking the LLM about is cats? In my impression, no. We got basically the same information out of the box, but now we have this information and we have 22 sources that we can use to back that information up. Thanks, deep research. This is it. This is all we need to do. The thinking model is even easier. You just ask OpenAI to determine if the response is, or the question is easy, medium, or hard difficulty, and you route it to the correct thinking blob. There you go. We're building OpenAI one feature at a time. Back to Dr. Greg. Before I pass you back to Dr. Greg, though, I got to remind you to hit the subscribe button, ring the bell notification. We're here every Wednesday doing these events. Love doing them. Back to Dr. Greg.
All right. Thank you, Wiz. So I want to just follow up on that incredible demo here. Cursor 2.0 came out last week, and they said, quote, so you can focus on the outcomes you want while agents take care of the details. And I just want to linger on this point. Is it becoming easier than ever to just do work that's going to be automated? That it seems like it is, it's how do we Cursor wants you to do this. They want you to let the try except happen with them. But you got to understand that it's a good ad. That on the review you're like, okay, yeah, that's dope. Add that.
And, I mean, this is true. So, and one of the things that I think is really important to think about is Cursor has been doing this. They have been making these changes, and I for the most part, I actually love them quite a bit. But one of the things that they explicitly call out when you look at the output of Cursor is there's a review button, right? Instead of just a keep all button, there's a review button. You should be clicking that. I think the main, if you want a very memey,
I want it.
Yeah. If you want a very memey way to think about the difference between vibe coding and AI assisted development, in vibe coding you click the keep all button, right? In AI assisted development, you look at each change and you determine if it's worth keeping or not keeping. And believe you me, there was a lot of not keeps when I got AI to do the pass
all right,
through.
that's good to know.
Because it's trying to do stuff that simply isn't necessary or is counter to the goal or is incorrect for some reason related to the APIs that we already have or what we want them, how we want them to function, right? Versus balancing complexity versus balancing simplicity and readability.
Yeah.
AI wants to do 600 lines of change and then you let it do 30 or 40, right? But you want to be able to scan through and say oh, this is unnecessary, oh, this is junk, oh, we don't need this, oh, we don't need to build a custom session handler because we already have the sessions being handled for us by the endpoint, right? Or we don't need this try start deep research implementation because it's already actually handling that on the back end. Or we don't need to build a LangGraph agent to handle the prompt rewriting or the enrichment or the user clarification because OpenAI's responses API and agent SDK is already plenty enough to handle that for us, right? So all of these decisions are important. It's important to make them and not just allow AI to make them, right? You want to, it's like a junior engineer. They're going to come back to you with 700 lines of code and you've got to tell them why 80% of those lines of code were totally useless.
That's right. Okay. Last question was, can everything that we built in this series be used in production, or that's just not the point?
I mean, you could, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, there's a bunch of wrapping you'd have to do around the application. You know, like it's just a fast API endpoint, but fast API is built for production. You know, we have this in memory. Deep research management.
Yeah.
You'd want to move that to a persistent backend so that you could continue to keep track of things through a restart. There's lots of different there's lots of different like things that you would need to wrap around this application that you could do with the help of AI, by the way. But for our purposes, it doesn't need to handle 10,000 users with persistent restarting, right? That's just going to be extra cost for functionality that's not necessary. And if you want it, it's relatively straightforward to add.
Okay. All right. So, Wiz, after having gone through all of these, part 1 through 5, it probably is worth it, especially for beginners and especially people seeking jobs, to go through and to be able to build a ChatGPT clone. It seems like one of the best ways, if you're going to self-study your way into a job, you might just start with something like this and then showcase it to people interviewing you. Now, at the same time, Wiz, we've heard the feedback from folks on this channel, right? We've heard the feedback that they don't really love the beginner content from us on YouTube. And loud and clear, we heard you guys. We're going to focus on that sweet, super advanced stuff again, starting next week. We're going to go dig into state of AI, let's cover a little bit of the Andre Karpathy pod with Dwarkesh. Let's get into the weeds again. We've got agent engineering with LangChain 1.0 coming up. I'm pretty excited about everything we have coming up, and we are back on track with super advanced stuff. Thank you guys for your feedback. If you are a beginner, though, definitely follow our Maven Lightning lessons that we'll continue to be pushing out and probably gear more a little bit towards folks getting up to speed in the game in 2026. So, Wiz, thanks for your expertise as always. That was a banger demo today. We'll see you next week. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for another weekly Wednesday workshop. We are AI Makerspace, and we are on a mission to create the world's leading community for people who want to build, ship, and share production LLM applications. Our quite advanced, cool, competent community on Discord is waiting for you to jump in and start building, shipping, and sharing today. And if you're looking to really accelerate your learning, maybe check out cohort 9 of the AI Engineering Bootcamp coming up January 13th. We're going to have some new curriculum that we're going to announce soon. If you're curious about what goes on in there, then check out the upcoming demo day for cohort 8. That's going to be next week on Thursday, November the 13th. You can actually register for it directly on LinkedIn. We'll drop the link in the chat, and you can see what folks have been building, shipping, and sharing in cohort 8. I'm really excited for it. We'd love to see you there. But that's all we got for you today. Thanks so much again for joining us for another weekly Wednesday workshop event with AI Makerspace. Dr. Greg here, the Wiz. We out. Until next time, keep building, shipping, and sharing. We'll do the same. See you guys.